Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Transformers Legacy Evolution Armada Universe Hotshot. This is the third attempt, officially, at making an Armada Hotshot. The first was obviously back in Transformers Armada, the original toy, which is, definitely a staple of that series, kind of a classic, but is a product of its time, was a bit of a brick. Then they did the Universe 08 Hotshot, which fixed the posability issue, but didn't really come off as a very good toy. I don't think many people were crazy about that one. So we get a third try, trying to strike that balance between posability, but also, stability, play value, and accuracy. Now, unlike the previous two, this Hotshot does not include his Minicon partner Jolt, so that is a big loss right there. I was really hoping Jolt would show up in some form, but just no dice there. So unless they do like a Minicon multi-pack down the line, we may have to go without. Luckily, unlike last year's Armada Starscream, this Hotshot at least includes Power Links points, at least one of them, so that if you do have Jolt from a previous release or any other, Armada-style Minicon, you can still attach them to this toy. They really, I think, dropped the ball with Starscream there, where they couldn't be bothered just mold in at least one Minicon port somewhere. So, I think this is an improvement over that. And again, it's a character that I'm pretty fond of overall. Armada's not my G1 or anything, but I did watch it as, I think, a teenager, and I found it enjoyable for the most part. And, the whole Unicron trilogy. The toys more so than the cartoons. The cartoons, got all over the place with quality, with Armada probably being the best, and then Energon was terrible, then Seibertron was kind of a step up, but still pretty shoddy. Alright, all that being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Hotshot's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see his instructions, and we'll see Hotshot himself in both vehicle and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Hotshot comes in your standard Legacy Evolution Deluxe packaging. You get your little half window here where you can see most of his bot mode. You get your QR code up top to scan on the Transformers website. Your branding, you get his name and faction symbol here, and then you get some nice artwork of the vehicle mode, complete with the little engine block blaster from the original toy, which is nice. Here you get some great artwork of the character in his robot mode, sporting the same blaster with, as the design team called it, his Axle Zuka. I don't know if that's an official name, but it works, right? You get the faraway shot, close-up shot, you get his name and ancient Autobot here. And then on this side, you get the renders in both vehicle and robot modes. He takes 21 steps to transform, so he's no slouch there. I very much appreciate that. His Evo Fusion feature that involves no fusion of any kind whatsoever is just having his Axle Zuka, pop up and spin around to be used. Doesn't fire anything, though it does have a 5mm port, so you can put blast effects and things like that in there. His visor does flip down, which is very cool, and it's actually fully colored this time with the silver and the clear blue. So, looking pretty good overall. And then on this side, we get, surprisingly, what would be kind of the Decepticon or bad guy half of our Legacy Evolution artwork. Though, I guess that's not really accurate either, right? Because I honestly see more good guys than bad guys here. Right? You get Laser Prime, who is apparently being re-released as a package refresh, which is so lame. I would honestly take a G2 recolor of Earthrise Prime than another Laser Prime, but whatever. You get your Armada Optimus, Armada Hotshot, wielding part of a Junkion, interestingly enough, really showcasing that feature of the Junkions being the new weaponizers. You get an Insecticon swarm here, and a bunch of Junkions on the bottom, with our possibly Nemesis robot mode here. So I guess, in this case, the dividing line between good and bad as far as the side panel is not very concrete. You kind of just have a mix on both sides, which, I guess it mixes things up a bit. You won't always get the same picture for the same faction. I like it overall, I suppose. So yeah, that's the packaging. Looks just as solid as it did on Needle Nose, who I just reviewed previously. But despite how nice it is, it's inevitable that we have to open this guy up. Alright, here's our instruction sheet for Hotshot. And you can see they still call him Armada Universe Hotshot. You get his nice render of his full Evo Fusion attack mode right here. We open this up. This shows you how to store his top axle inside of his backpack. This shows you how to put him into that attack mode, where you have him wield his little engine block cannon in one of his hands, flip the visor down, flip out the axle Zuka. A little crease right there. And then we get the transformation from robot to vehicle, which continues around on the back. Takes up most of the back here, which is good. Nice 21-step transformation, nice and satisfying. Get the finished product. And then it shows you how to store the engine block on top of the hood, like the old toy. Sadly, they don't show off his Minicon compatibility. It really is just an afterthought for them, which is a real shame. Like, I don't know how you're going to celebrate Armada's legacy and not go all in on the Minicon thing, because that's what Armada was all about. And here's our look at Hotshot's vehicle mode. And overall, it is very, very faithful to the vehicle mode of the original toy. Right down to a lot of the smaller details. Proportions are a little bit different. It has a much squatter profile than the original toy, just due to the fact that they wanted to, make a more posable robot and one with better proportions. So obviously some things you're gonna have to change, but overall it's pretty accurate. It's got your little like black V right here on the roof. It's got this little grate pattern, though it's not painted black anymore, unfortunately. He does trade out the 2 Minicom ports on the sides for 5mm ports, because they do still have to, keep them compatible with Legacy. Maintains the one in the middle right here. It's got his engine block blaster, which has been definitely reshaped a good bit, but still, more or less looks the part. They actually moved the exhausts out to the side instead of coming off the top, which kind of makes more sense if somebody wants to be able to see out of that windshield. Speaking of the windshield, I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but in person, the color matching right here, this yellow paint, is very, very off from the yellow plastic. And I think it was an odd choice. So we know, especially due to the countless Studio Series Bumblebees that have come out, that yellow paint is really hard to color match to yellow plastic, especially when it's on translucent plastic like this. So that's already kind of a known issue. And then to make matters worse, they put it on top of this very dark blue translucent plastic, which is going to show through on the paint and make it even darker. So in person, the roof section really does not look great. It's more of a greenish yellow than this bright, almost, French's mustard yellow that Hotshot's known for. So that was, in my opinion, kind of a miss. I honestly would have preferred if they just left the windshields like a solid piece of plastic and put paint on them. Like just paint it blue like they did the original toy, because you're not missing much by not being able to see in here anyway. You just got like ball joints and stuff showing through. So I get the general consensus is that clear windows and stuff are better than painted on ones. But I think in Hotshot's case, it would have been better to just, have a solid yellow plastic and then just paint these in blue. But, oh well, that's what they went with. It doesn't kill the toy for me. It definitely hurts the vehicle mode far more than it'll hurt the robot mode. And if you're somebody that doesn't care about color matching, you're not really going to be bothered either way. All right, so we get to the front section here. This is mostly the same. They actually added silver to this part above these little silver vents here. Headlights are still painted silver. He does lose little front lights right here. Used to be red ones right there. And the one that bugs me probably the most is that his rims are completely unpainted. The original toy, it was cool because it had these like cool blue silver painted rims, and then each wheel actually had a little red kind of circle right there in the middle, like a raised circle, to match the red missile that was part of his Axel Zuka. So they actually, kind of did away with that entirely, which that part I actually don't mind, right? Because he doesn't have a red missile this time. They make this like blast effect compatible, so you don't need to add extra red circles on there to match it, but I do miss the painted rims. It would have been real nice to see some silver on these. Other than that, it's all pretty good. They did lose the paint on the back, which is pretty commonplace for a modern Transformer toy, The plus side is that the head is no longer hanging out the back there. So, there's definitely some give or take. I would say overall, I prefer the old vehicle mode by a little bit, just because it is bulkier. There's, little more love in the paint department given to it, but this is still really nice and is more than adequate in my opinion for an update to the original. Speaking of the original, here is that original toy right here. This is our classic Armada Hotshot, the very first toy of this character. And you can see some differences here. The yellow used is very different, and I actually do prefer the newer yellow because it does better match his animation model, and it's less of this like bright neon yellow that a lot of toys in like the early 2000s or so were known for using, and I always thought it was a bit of an eyesore. So I actually do prefer the updated yellow here. You can see the color matching issue I talked about, whereas on him, they just kind of painted this nice metallic blue, which I think would have been more than adequate in this case. You can see the extra Minicon ports, Vice 5mm ports here, which I guess they can actually kind of plug into each other, can't they? Oh man, look at that! Evo Fusion! That's the real Evo Fusion right there. So that's kind of neat. They can power link. All right, you can see the difference in like the grill there, the back. He lost all that nice, like, I don't know, it's black, but like dark gray paint. Not a huge loss, but still kind of annoying. But again, like I said, no visible head syndrome, so that's a win. Let's see. So yeah, they're both pretty nice in their own right. Of course, now we have to address probably one of the most burning questions that people had about this toy. What's his Minicon compatibility? So we talked about how they, took out 2 of the ports here and just changed them into 5mm holes. But they did retain the one in the middle. However, you can see that this section right here is significantly raised up around the sides compared to this one. And it's also more narrow. And it does create a little bit of an issue. So here is the classic Minicon Jolt that in vehicle mode plugs in right here on that back port. And it'll just plug on there as is, no modification required. And they also had this cool feature where this part could swing down and act as a way to be like a speed boost for Hot Shot. So it was really neat. One of the better implemented Minicon gimmicks of the Armada line. This guy right here, you're going to run into a problem because of how narrow this space is and how raised up these are. Now, Jolt's like cockpit area will fit in here, but the arms get in the way. So unfortunately, you have to actually point him down. It's the best way to get clearance. Kind of point the arms down a little bit and plug them in like so. And then the cockpit will fit, but the arms unfortunately don't have the clearance to go in there without having to, be modified and make the helicopter look kind of weird. The other downside is that he can't utilize that whole propeller speed boost thing because he's smaller and the tail fin hits the ground right here. So you just have the tail dragging and you can't really get the propeller pointing like facing straight forward. Instead, it's kind of pushing him down a little bit. So, it's unfortunate. I was really hoping for them, if they weren't going to include the Minicon, at least make sure the old gimmick worked. Now, this is the original Jolt. I don't have the Universe version, which was its own new mold to compare it to. I imagine it's very, very much the same, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Universe version works better. But, yeah, unfortunately, the gimmick in this mode is not great. And it is a shame, because you figure, it's so close yet so far. They got the port on there, unlike the Starscream, but it doesn't work. Not very well, and not with his own Minicon. So, yeah, that's probably the big downside to me. Just, that could have been implemented a lot better. They could have adjusted the proportions and everything. Made this space wider, so at least you can mount it on there without having to move the arms around, even if he's not tall enough to utilize the propeller. Or, better yet, he could have just come with a Jolt. That's just sized a little better for him, but oh well. So yeah, he's got the port, but you're not going to be able to access the play feature like you used to, so that's something you'll just kind of have to begrudgingly accept if you pick this guy up. And now it's time to transform Hot Shot into his robot mode. So the first thing you want to do is take off the engine block accessory if you haven't already. Just plugs in with 2 5mm ports right there. Nice little tech detailing underneath. Okay, so the first thing you do is you have these tabs that are plugging into the back end here, and you got to kind of work them loose. It actually may be easier to open the doors first. That way you can get a finger up under here and pull up. So I would do that. I'd open the doors up first. So you get that loose, right? Break all that free. Then you're just going to kind of pull this out. Leave it just kind of dangling in the back. All right, we have to separate these. So these, these car roof halves, they plug together. Because of the way they're plugged together, I would recommend, instead of pulling them apart, because it's all clear plastic, lift up on this side a little bit. Because it kind of fits in like a puzzle piece, and when you're pulling them apart, you're kind of forcing the plastic against itself. So I would do it that way. And the front bit here, you can just pull apart. Like so. So you get all that. You're actually going to swing these around. These little yellow bits here, you're going to fold them all the way in. Get them out of the way. Like so. And lift up the arms, get them out of the way. And these are on double hinges, so you're going to swing all the way down. Actually, first, fold these all the way down because you got to reveal that little tab. And swing these down because that tab's going to secure the knee in place. So you do the same thing here. All the way down. Extend the leg. Alright, and you spin them. Flip the feet out here. I want to pop them loose because they're actually tabbed in place. So to get that ankle tilt, you got to untab them. Hear a little click. Alright. Then you swing these halves inward. And they have this little groove that just kind of rests on this bit here. So it doesn't plug in securely, it just kind of rests there and kind of sort of keeps it straight. All right, so you get this. Spin the waist around, like so. Arms, you'll fix them so they're facing the right way. So they actually have to face this way with like the elbows bending inward in the vehicle mode because those doors need to tab into these little slots right here. So make sure you do them that way when you go to the car mode. All right. I'm gonna flip the head out like this. Lift these up. Oh, well, that's not supposed to come off. First time it's done that. Well, I mean, I guess if you want to take it off, it's good that it can come off so easily. If you don't want the kibble. Oh boy. There we go. Okay. So flip that down, it's going to tab together, and then these bits right here are going to extend forward, tab onto here, making his classic shoulder ornaments. So this time, as you can see, they are separate from the actual shoulders, so he gets a lot more articulation. Doesn't get that whole, why my shoulders hurt thing. All right, so look at that. That is the robot mode. You can see my visor doesn't want to stay up very well. It's basically all the way up or all the way down. Very loose on my copy. Hopefully it's not that way for all of them. So yeah, that's the robot mode just by itself. Of course, we have his little engine block blaster. Now, unlike the original toy, it doesn't plug into his chest at all. But unlike the original toy, he can actually hold it in his hands. And I'll show you, the deal with that here in a minute. It can go in either hand. It's got 2 posts on it. And the way you want to do it is that you want the, whatever hand it's going into, put it to where this is facing more inward than outward, because these little knuckle guards create a clearance issue if you try to go the other way. So he gets that, and he actually holds it very well. Looks good. We saw the head's on a swivel instead of a ball joint, but it kind of fits, the shape of his head. You got the visor. It flips up, flips down. Again, like I said, my copy is pretty loose, so it has to go all the way up to stay up. Kind of annoying. These are meant to stay in place, though they can move a little bit if you untap them. He's got the universal shoulders. He's got the bicep swivel, the single elbow bend. No wrist articulation, but I'm imagining that just is owed to his small size. He's got the full waist swivel, universal hips, thigh swivel. He's got single bending knees that are unfortunately hampered by all that kibble on the back. So he transferred his car kibble. The old toy, the roof kibble, went on the backs of his arms, which made them really bulky and unwieldy. He moved into the legs, which cleans up the robot, I'd say, overall, but does lead to, other articulation issues. So you got to kind of pick your poison there. It had to go somewhere. He's got, the ankle tilt, which is nice. And as far as the standard articulation, that's it, right? And then we talk about that Evo fusion ability. So the way you're supposed to do it is you flip the goggles down, like so. Then we have to flip out his axle Zuka. So you flip it up, turn it this way. This is the side that you want showing in the front, because that's the blast effect compatible side. This side is just a clip. So there you go. Now he's really ready for combat. And he looks good. He really does. He poses well. He's got much better proportions than the old toy. I mean, he looks a lot more like he jumped out of the show. Obviously he's got some extra kibble because it has to go somewhere. Backpack's a pretty decent size, not as flush as the old toy, and he does get the, car halves on the back of the legs, though, again, it's either there or on the arms, so I'd rather them be on the back of the legs, personally. Let's go ahead and give him a blast effect, too, just make this look cooler. Borrow one from Kingdom Rodimus here. Something that doesn't block his face too much, but still looks decently sized. And the blue just kind of matches his aesthetic, so I like that right there. Of course, you can attach any blast effect you want to. So, that's pretty cool. In place of a spring-loaded missile, you just have, a static piece that can have nice blast effects, which in my book, as an adult collector, that's my preference, right? Like, gimmicks are cool when you're a little kid. As somebody who is buying these as a collectible and not a plaything, I very much prefer, losing the spring-loaded gimmicks and things that kind of compromise the toy as an action figure. So I'm okay with this. Speaking of that, one thing I actually forgot to mention. So the original toy, the feet, they were spring-loaded, and you can only really get them out starting in vehicle mode. You'd have to press his little engine block blaster down into the hood, which would cause the feet to pop out, and they actually had like saw blades sculpted into them, so it's kind of an attack mode. He doesn't have the saw blades on there or anything, so they kind of nixed that. But the plus side is that you're not dependent on this thing to actually complete his transformation without having to, kind of defeat the latch on his feet and potentially break something. So I do think that is an improvement. The idea of unlocking transformations with a partner, which kind of dates all the way back to like the Power Master days, it's cool in theory until you lose that partner figure or that accessory. And then you realize, well, now I have to jury-rig some kind of way to make this happen without the partner figure. So I'm okay with ditching that little bit. Plus, I never really used that method anyway, so it is what it is. And now we get Hotshot once again with his Armada counterpart. And you can see, very similar designs. This guy is a bit clunkier. He is bigger. The size difference isn't as pronounced in robot mode as it is vehicle mode. The heights aren't too dissimilar, maybe half an inch or so. But you can just tell that one of these looks like a modern action figure, and one of these looks like something from a few decades ago. And, I mean, that's fine. It was good for its time, though even in its time, it was kind of known for being a bit of a brick compared to some other Armada toys out there. But it was still adequate, in my opinion. You can see here that the engine block is attached to his chest. Just plugs in with some little holes there. It can be taken off to reveal what his chest looks like underneath. You can see they got the design down pretty well. Actually added a silver horizontal band on his chest design that is unpainted on this toy. You can see the visor difference. His visor is just that blackish plastic, flips down, much tighter fit, so you don't have to worry about it flopping around like on the new one here. And again, this may just be my copy. You can see the car kibbles on the backs of his arms, which do make his arms look kind of goofy and make it somewhat difficult for him to hold certain accessories. Talked about how he can't actually hold his engine block thing because none of the posts on this are big enough. So they just kind of flop around in there. So really it's just meant to go on his chest in robot mode. One thing I didn't point out, but these little posts on top, they're actually meant to plug in a Jolt in the vehicle mode, so Jolt can kind of ride on his hood if you want him to, though it's not nearly as cool as putting him on the back there. So yeah, this one is definitely more of a gimmick toy, right? It's not posable, doesn't have really even a blaster it can hold to look cool. Its whole identity centers around the ability to do this. So you turn around, he's got another Minicon port right here. You plug Jolt, or technically any Minicon, onto that port, and push up. Is he blocking it? I feel like he's blocking it. He did block it. Oh no. Okay, so he's supposed to get this to deploy here. Let me grab that missile. Here we go. So it's supposed to get this to flip up, and it'll just stay horizontal until you push up on the Minicon port, and it'll cause this to spin around. Now the downside is when it spins around, it's made to trigger and, if I can do it, and automatically deploy the missile. And that's not something I'm really crazy about. I never liked it when the weapon deployment and firing are in the same mechanism, dating all the way back to like Optimal Optimus, where the same slide to activate his lights also fired the missiles into your eyeball. So yeah, I think getting rid of that is a huge upgrade on this guy's part, because you don't have to worry about stray missiles just, flying off anywhere. And then the only way to make sure the missile, actually stays loaded is to keep it like that, and that just looks silly. So yeah. no matter what, he's kind of compromised by the play gimmick, in my opinion. We saw with this guy, no minicon is needed to activate his feature. You just pull it out, which again, like, it does kind of defeat the purpose of the minicons because they are supposed to unlock, these hidden abilities for the Transformers. But it does make him a little more play-friendly. The one thing that is a huge shame for this new toy is, he only had that one minicon port on him. Now that's tucked away behind his head, so you can't even utilize it. So he went from having one available port to none in his robot mode. And that, to me, is a huge shame. Like, it just makes the fact that he's missing ports that much more of an issue. I think, if anything, they could have maybe just kept one of these on the side as a minicon port or something. Put him on his hands. Like, I don't know. Just that lack of compatibility for, a year of Legacy that's supposed to be really celebrating Armada seems very half-baked. And, it's weird because the biggest thing that differentiated Armada from all the different Transformers lines that had come before it was that minicon integration. Like, as Transformers, they were just Transformers. They didn't do anything super unique or amazing. I mean, you had some cool features, right? You had, like, Tidal Wave that broke apart into armor, and you had, like, the combining between Optimus and Jetfire, but those aren't wholly unique to Armada, and definitely not original to them. So losing that ability really, I think, helps take away the identity of this character. Because, Hotshot and Jolt, they are a pairing that are just kind of iconic for Armada. Him not being able to access Jolt or use him does seem like a big letdown to me. Maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you think all gimmicks are trash and they should all go away. And if that's the case, then you won't have an issue with this. But I am very disappointed to see, this wasn't integrated just at least a little bit more. Some accessible port somewhere in the robot mode would have made a huge difference, in my opinion. Here's a group shot with the other modern Hotshot toy, and this is Transformers Seige Hotshot. Now, this toy, as far as I can tell, is really a Generation 1 version of the Hotshot character. Like, this guy's explicitly called out as being from the Armada universe, right? Your Unicron Trilogy universe. This guy, as far as I know, he's just meant to be, his counterpart in the modern G1 continuity that is, War for Seibertron and all that. And I think Legacy and War for Seibertron are supposed to be, the same continuity. Especially since they were planning on making Legacy a sequel to the War for Seibertron show. So that's the way I look at it. He's modeled after the Seibertron Defense version of Hotshot, which was this guy's, most modern form. But he is, at the end of the day, just a simple Hound retool and has much more of a G1 aesthetic. They do look pretty cool together, though. And the idea that these two could coexist in the same universe, thanks to the storyline of Legacy and all these portals opening up, I mean, it'd be a really nice little team-up, if that show had continued. Hopefully it'd be better than War for Cybertron, but, if it had, I mean, they already have, the character model for Hound. They just have to, do a new head, recolor it, call it good there. Include these two together, fighting back-to-back. I think that'd be pretty neat. But yeah, they do look good together. This guy is surprisingly a bit taller than this Hotshot. Not by a whole lot, just, by a hair, but... I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, right? If he is, the rough and tough version of the character who got that, Primus upgrade. At least in the Unicron trilogy he did. So, really, the only major form of Hotshot we're missing in a modern toy line now is the Energon version. Now, the Energon Hotshot toy was never really great because it had to do that power linksing gimmick. So, proportions are really weird and stuff. But I think his base design is cool enough to where if they just made him as his own thing without having to form, an upper or lower body to something, so he could actually have better proportions, better posability, I think he would look very much at home with these guys. And then you could have your full run, your full trilogy of Hotshots. Of course, they could go the extra mile and actually redo this guy as his own mold and make him look more like the original, but I have a feeling they're not going to do that. They seem to really, really be focusing on the Armada portion of Unicron Trilogy, which is fair because I think it was the most popular and it's where a lot of these, characters first started out in that trilogy, so it's their most iconic designs. They did experiment with the Seibertron chapter a little bit by releasing this guy, and they did the Galaxy Upgrade Optimus, but they didn't seem to sell very well, and I think that kind of gave them some cold feet on pursuing, Seibertron anymore. But who knows, we'll see. Maybe we'll get some more Seibertron designs down the road, but it looks like this year, is going to be the year of Armada, right? Because we got this dude, we got the Megatron, and the Commander Optimus we know are coming. So maybe next year we'll see some Energon, we'll see some Seibertron. Who knows? And here's a group shot with another Armada character being released through the Greater Legacy line. This is last year's Armada Starscream. Now, where Hotshot drops the ball when it comes to Minicon compatibility, Starscream just ignored it completely. There is not a single Minicon port anywhere on this toy. So if you were hoping to partner him up with his old pal Mirage or any other, Unicron trilogy Minicons you may have, it's just not happening. I guess this right here could technically serve as a Minicon port, but what are you going to attach to his sword, It's kind of weird. Speaking of a sword, this is the Star Saber. In fact, I think I have it turned around here. Let me fix that. Right? It's a single piece, whereas it used to be made up of actual Minicons. You can see them sculpted in there, and it is meant to look, a little bit more like its on-screen appearance, where the blade would kind of turn into like blue energy. So they kept the blue from the show, but they also kept the actual plane sculpting from the toy. I mean, to me, it feels really cheap. I didn't review Armada Starscream, so let me just say, the toy itself is solid. The accessories, I think, are garbage. The fact that his wing blade right here is just a separate sword and not actually made of one of his wings, or doesn't fold away behind him like on the Thrilling 30 toy, I thought that was just a real letdown. I mean, how much would it have killed them just tool a hinge in here, like a simple non-pinned hinge to make that fold up and plug it behind the wing or something. And then, of course, the Star Saber. I mean, it's good if you just want a show-accurate Star Saber, because it is, going to be kind of small compared to one made of 3 Minicons, and it will scale with Hotshot better, which we'll see in a second. But it still feels just really cheap to me. As somebody who very much enjoyed Armada and all the crazy stuff that went on with that toy line in the cartoon, it's very disappointing. But like I said, we can borrow this from old Screamer here and give it to Hotshot, who's probably the most famous wielder of the Star Saber. He was the guy that was entrusted with it. Let me pick this dude up. Old Floppy McGee here. And honestly, I think this looks a lot better with Hotshot than it does Starscream. It just scales to him a lot better. I always thought it was way too small for the Starscream toy. It looks, it's smaller than, his wing blade, and it's supposed to be this big, awesome sword. So it definitely works better for Hotshot. So if you do have the Armada Starscream from last year, you can totally upgrade Hotshot with a Star Saber weapon, and I'm pretty sure they meant for this to happen. They wanted you to do this for Hotshot. So I know I personally am totally going to have him wield this on my display. Kind of goes against my rule of keeping accessories with the original owner, but in this case, I'm making an exception because it just looks really, really cool. And this completes our look at Legacy Evolution Armada Hotshot. I have some mixed feelings on this toy. I think as just a pure standalone Hotshot update, it's phenomenal, right? It takes that base design and just reworks it to make him a lot more posable, much more well-proportioned, and less reliant on gimmicks to, do his transformation. They also improve the whole engine block blaster thing and actually make it where he can hold it now. So I think for that, he's great. As an Armada character, an Armada callback, I do think he just pretty much fails miserably, right? The only hint that he was ever an Armada character is that one Minicon attachment on the back of the vehicle that can't even, properly work with his classic Minicon partner. He obviously doesn't come with the partner, which wasn't unexpected after, Starscream and everything, but still very disappointing. I mean, he's not a big toy, right? He's definitely not the most budget-heavy deluxe out there. So, it's kind of mixed feelings of being impressed, but also being disappointed at the same time. So for what he is, I think he's great. I love the fact that he's got his little Star Saber that you can have him interact with from Starscream. But I really was hoping for more, right? They had talked about kind of learning their lesson after Starscream, and seeing that people did want a little bit more interaction, with the whole Armada gimmick, and they gave us one port that you can only use in vehicle mode, and that's it. So, it's a big mixed bag for me. I do recommend it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a bad toy or that it's a disappointment, because it is easily the best Hotshot toy we've ever had. The original, it's a classic, but it is a brick, and it's just full of spring-loaded gimmicks that like to trigger at the worst times. it just doesn't look very great, right? The whole why my shoulders hurt me were spawned from how clunky that toy was. This guy, huge upgrade over that, much more fun to play with on his own. I really wish they could have worked in that Minicon compatibility a little bit more. An extra port somewhere at least, and I would have loved it if he had a little jolt. And, you know, I do mean little, right? He's probably going to be smaller than the classic one here, because the classic one is a bit big for this guy, who is a bit downscaled with, you know, modern scaling. So a smaller jolt, you know, something like Micromaster size, I think would have been great. And I don't think that would have broken the budget on this guy, because, again, he's not very big. He's not super complex. Like, he's good, but, you know, there have been much more involved deluxes out there. So, I don't know. I like him. I just wish he could have been a little bit more. Of course, that is just how I feel about this new Hotshot. So now I want to know what you all think of this toy. Do you plan on picking this guy up? Does he scratch that itch for you as like a good Hotshot update? Or did you maybe never own the original, so this is your first time getting him? Or do you not want this? Either you don't like the way it turned out, or you just have no interest in the character. Any and all feedback, as always, is welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Transformers Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Armada Universe Hotshot. And with all that said, I will see you next time.